Hey everyone, welcome to the Smart Habits Podcast, the podcast that helps you master your mind and your habits so you can work smarter, live better, and make progress that lasts. I am your host, Alex. In this Smart Habits series, The Science of Progress, we explore the fascinating psychology and neuroscience behind productivity, motivation, and focus. Each episode uncovers one hidden truth about how your brain shapes success and how to use that knowledge to create small, powerful shifts in your professional life and beyond. Now, let's begin right where most of us struggle, our goals. Why do so many of them fail, even when we're doing everything right? In episode 1, we explore the surprising neuroscience behind goal setting and how your brain might actually be sabotaging your progress without you realizing it. And to help unpack that, I'm joined by Elina, who's been exploring something really fascinating about how our brains actually work when we try to change our habits. You mentioned something earlier, Elina, was something that really caught my attention. Why don't you share that with us?
Thanks, Alex, for having me on your podcast today. Here's something that blew my mind. Research shows that 92% of New Year's resolutions fail, but it's not because of lack of motivation or willpower. The real reason is far more surprising, and it has everything to do with how our brains sabotage our progress without us even knowing it. That's such a fascinating statistic, and it really makes you wonder what's actually going on beneath the surface of our goal-setting attempts.
Well, I've been diving deep into the neuroscience behind this, and what's really interesting is how these invisible habits create what researchers call progress paralysis, where we're technically doing all the right things but getting nowhere.
So what exactly are these invisible habits that are holding people back? Because I feel like everyone I know is experiencing this same frustration.
The research points to 3 specific patterns, and here's what's fascinating. They're actually hardwired into our brain's reward system. The first one is what neuroscientists call temporal discounting, our tendency to prioritize immediate comfort over long-term progress.
That sounds like it might explain why we keep pushing important tasks to tomorrow, even when we know better.
Exactly, and studies show that every time we say, "I'll start tomorrow," our brains actually release a small dose of dopamine. We're literally getting chemically rewarded for procrastination.
That's wild. So we're basically getting high on our own good intentions.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. This connects directly to the second pattern, what behavioral economists call complexity bias. Research shows that humans consistently overcomplicate simple tasks by about 300%. We add so many unnecessary steps that we essentially paralyze ourselves.
Oh my goodness. Like when someone decides to start exercising and suddenly needs a perfect meal plan, workout schedule, and expensive gear just to take a walk around the block?
Precisely. And studies from Harvard Business School show that this overcomplication actually serves as a form of self-protection. It gives us a built-in excuse for why we haven't started yet.
Well, that explains so much about my own behavior. I've got 3 different productivity apps on my phone right now, and I'm still not any more productive.
You know what's fascinating about that? Research shows that people with multiple productivity apps actually accomplish 23% less than those who use simple pen and paper.
That brings up an interesting question. How do we actually break free from these patterns if they're so deeply ingrained in our psychology?
Well, the latest research in behavioral psychology points to something called minimum viable action, the smallest possible step that moves you forward. Studies show that people who focus on tiny, immediate actions are 71% more likely to achieve their goals than those who make elaborate plans.
So it's really about breaking through that initial barrier of resistance, isn't it?
Exactly, and this leads us to the third pattern, what psychologists call the comfort zone fortress. Data shows that we spend an average of 47% of our productive time doing tasks that feel important but don't actually move us toward our goals.
That reminds me of a study I read about how executives spend up to 80% of their meetings discussing issues that account for less than 20% of their company's value.
And here's what makes these 3 patterns so dangerous when they work together. They create what researchers call a progress illusion. We feel busy and productive, but we're actually just spinning our wheels.
So how do we actually break free from these patterns? It seems like just being aware of them isn't enough.
The research suggests a fascinating approach, something called implementation intentions. Instead of making plans, you create specific if-then statements. Studies show this approach increases success rates by up to 300%.
That's really interesting. Could you give an example of how that works in practice?
Sure. Instead of saying, I'll exercise more with yes, you'd say, if it's 6 p.m. on Monday, then I'll put on my running shoes and walk for 10 minutes. The specificity actually bypasses our brain's natural resistance to change.
That makes so much sense. It removes all the decision-making friction that usually trips us up.
And here's what's really powerful about this approach. It works with our brain's reward system instead of against it. Each small success creates what neuroscientists call a completion high, a burst of dopamine that reinforces the positive behavior.
So it's really about creating these small wins that build momentum over time?
Exactly. And research shows that people who focus on these micro-progress markers are 76% more likely to maintain long-term behavior change compared to those who aim for big transformations.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective, from trying to make huge changes to focusing on these tiny, consistent actions.
And remember, the data is clear on this. One small action today is worth more than all the perfect plans for tomorrow. Because in the end, progress isn't about motivation or willpower. It's about understanding and working with our brain's natural tendencies instead of fighting against them. Elina, thank you for joining us and sharing such valuable insight. It's been great having you here to unpack what really drives our habits beneath the surface.
Thanks so much for having me, Alex. This was such an insightful conversation, and I hope everyone listening takes a moment today to notice one small habit they can shift. That's where real change begins.
And to everyone listening, if you found this episode helpful, follow the podcast and share it with another professional who'd appreciate this kind of conversation. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, stay curious, stay consistent, and keep growing.